Hello and welcome to Bring On the Medicine, a holistic healer summit. My name is Janae Robinson. I am the owner of Janae's Essentials in Burley, Idaho. I am a life coach, a yoga therapist, and the host of this summit. I am here with Ellen Cremer. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Janae. It's great to see you finally face to face after
Face to face.
phone calls in the last year or so. It's great to be here, and thanks for putting this together. Yeah,
You bet. I was very excited to see Ellen today because we used to get together via Zoom quite a lot, and then we decided to go to phone calls because we both have cats that find themselves into crazy predicaments.
And we sometimes hold our phone calls in pajamas. So
That's true too. Exactly. It's usually
more comfortable not being seen.
exactly true. So that just kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of our meetings. And Ellen, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself so that everybody knows who you are, and then we can continue our conversation.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I am, well, first of all, Janae's colleague. Janae and I met maybe 4 or 5 years ago during our yoga therapy program with Phoenix Rising. I know a lot of people, when they hear me talk, they're like, what's that accent? Where is she from? You know, and in my ear, I'm like, I sound American. Like there's no accent here, but I know there is. So born and raised in Germany. I grew up in a small community near the Dutch border in Germany. And hopped around in Germany and Europe for a while. I was a dancer. It feels like a few lifetimes ago at this point, but trained to be a professional dancer, which brought me to New York City about 20 years ago. It's interesting being from that more rural environment, but then having spent many, many years in urban cities, which is, where the dance happens. Like that's where the art communities are. And I rode that wave for a long time and had an exciting life in New York, which is also where I started to study yoga. It was an amazing platform for learning, just a lot of opportunities to take classes and certification courses. And then eventually moved to California, which is where I am now, back to the roots. I'm back in a very, very rural community. In fact, we are about 6 miles down a windy road in the forest. My husband and I bought property here, build a house, build a big garden. We grow our own food as much as we can. And I am a yoga teacher and yoga therapist at this point. So my work is mostly local. I have a brick and mortar studio that's around me right now. I do a little bit of online work as well, but mostly working with the community here. And I remember, Janae, in our training, kind of like towards the end, there were so many conversations about what do you want to do with this certification? Like, how do you want to bring this work to the world? And I remember feeling really overwhelmed by those questions because I had so many ideas and so many inspirations and thought like, oh my God, I can see this in so many different ways. So really like sat in that uncertainty for a long time and eventually started to embrace it a little bit more because that's what was happening. I really did not know. And at this point, I have a lot of pots on the stove. I didn't choose one particular format, but have a whole yoga therapy buffet, I want to say. So offering a lot of different options that includes working with private clients in yoga therapy sessions. I do a lot of group work, some simple weekly classes that are offered here at the studio. We do some themed workshops or multi-week courses as well. We do video work, which is a kind of a product from COVID. It was our way at the time to continue to support our yoga community here. And we decided to continue that because our online community is a small community. However, I believe really strongly in wanting to support a sense of self-agency in people. Not the perfect business model. It'd be better to have clients just lining up for weeks and months and years, but I have a really strong sense for I want to support you in engaging your own self-care practices that are independent from me or your ability to come to the studio or even your financial resources. And so the videos have become a really amazing way to inspire home practice so that people can really, in their own time, whenever they need support, have access to that. And that includes my husband. So he's a big part of this teamwork project there, taking care of the technology, taking care of the video work. And then the final piece is working with organizations. So I develop different yoga therapy programs for organizations. Sometimes it's a one-time event, a wellness day for a group of employees, and also currently 2 organizations that I support ongoingly. And we always explore what's the best format, what's the community like, what are some of the challenges that they are facing. They come in for group classes. Others might send in employees for private sessions. They have access to video work. So it depends on what's most supportive for them. Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell. So you dive in, ask me questions.
I love that. I love that. Yes, I I think that when you continue staying in touch with your classmates and we just watch each other bloom and blossom in these different areas, it really is a beautiful thing because I do remember those conversations and there definitely was, I think for all of us, if I could speak for the whole group, it is a little daunting thinking about where you're going to take yoga therapy. And so really my first question is, tell us your definition of yoga therapy and why this work is such a valuable resource.
Yeah. I'm going to try not to take up our entire hour for this today because I feel like it's such a big question and I'll probably continue to define and redefine that for a while. I would say that there's certainly some practices in the realm of yoga that I would consider more therapeutic, more healing. So one part that comes to mind is movement. And when I say that, I don't think of strong or demanding exercise type of yoga routines, but rather gentle movements with a lot of breath awareness that have the capacity to maybe settle or regulate someone's nervous system, that are also incredibly healing for our musculoskeletal system. So releasing some tension and discomfort from the body. And movement also an incredible piece for discharging tension. So if someone comes in just really amped up and very anxious, very stressed, asking them to sit quietly in some contemplation is probably not going to work. So drawing from movement practices as a way to discharge and release some of that energy that's present, bringing them into a more regulated state, I think is one piece that I work with for sure. And then there's kind of the other side of it, which I work with a lot of restorative yoga, which I think is incredibly healing and therapeutic, especially in a world where for most of us, our plates are just so incredibly full. We are so overwhelmed. We are all day long taking in more information, more information, more information, and there's just not enough space to process, to digest, to take a break, to let our bodies rest and to come into stillness and quietness. So restorative yoga is a big piece that we're exploring here at the studio as a way to, again, reset, balance, and heal. And then the part where, you and I, of course, had a lot of explorations, especially through Phoenix Rising, is a much deeper inward awareness that we bring into our practice. So especially in that slowing down, there's an opportunity to get curious about what are the things that I discover about myself when I am not distracted with my devices, when I'm not running around taking care of my chores, but I'm becoming a little still and I'm checking in to see what's happening inside of me right now. And to me, that's already such a groundbreaking shift because I feel so many of us, we are so outwardly oriented and often very distracted from what's happening inside. And even to a point, and I think it's very unconscious and very innocent, where we also dissociate or disconnect from what's happening inside. There may be emotions that are so big and overwhelming. There may be physical pain or health conditions that are so big and overwhelming. Understandably, part of us just wants to check out and distract from that. And that can temporarily be important. So I'm not dismissing that. I think it has its place and its time. But in the long run, I think many of us realize that's not the way to go. I've got to, at some point, connect with what's happening inside. And a lot of times, clients come in and what they notice inside is a lot of thinking, like a restless mind. And in yoga, there is this idea that we need to stop our mind from thinking. And I remember even in my days back in New York, there was a strong sense of thinking was almost like seen as this evil thing. Like we were so focused on chasing this like blissed out, relaxed, blank, relaxed and serene state. Whenever thinking came in, it was this disturbance that we just continuously tried to fight off, right? And so for me, if anything, it's the opposite. It's like, oh, let's get curious and see what's actually showing up for you, right? Like, are you thinking about an argument that you had with someone a couple of days ago, right? Are you thinking about an anticipated event, something that's coming up for you? And once we identify what's there, we can start to, I sometimes call that like an embodied inquiry. We can start to notice where in your body are you experiencing that thought? Like, how does that show up in your body? Do you notice your shoulders feeling heavy and tight? Do you notice some tension, constriction? Do you notice feeling tired? Like, what's happening in your body as you're thinking that thought? Right? And that's where we start to come out of this world of mind and thinking into being more present with our body. And we can inquire even deeper to see, well, now that you notice those sensations here, what is the feeling? What is the emotion? Are you frustrated? Right? Are you sad? Are you scared? What's happening there for you? Right? And we might drop even deeper to see, is there an unmet need there? Right? If you're sad, maybe there's the need to just have a good cry. Right? And that is that therapeutic moment of healing, and something gets to release, gets to process. Maybe you notice being scared and there's a deep need for safety, where at some point you needed to feel safe but didn't. And how can we create that experience of safety to kind of fill in on something that was missing at some point? Right. So the turning inward, to me, it's a way of connecting with what we often call symptoms or problems, right? Or conditions in our medical system. And to me, it's more of a sense of um, almost regarding those things as teachers, right? As something that we can connect with and can become present with, but that we can also learn from. So for me, this process of yoga therapy is so much about gaining more self-knowledge and gaining more understanding for what's really happening inside, right? And through more understanding, we can also explore, what is it that I need, right? How do I go forward from here? What are those little insights or pieces of wisdom that arise that I just don't notice when I'm in this rushed and stressed and outwardly oriented state?
Yeah, I feel like that gives us opportunity to look at that plate that you had mentioned earlier that is so filled with things.
Right.
And it gives us an opportunity to say, do I need everything here on this plate and why?
Sure.
What,
Yeah.
what significance do I need in life? What am I trying to, or what patterns are still trying to rule my life that maybe aren't serving me like they used to, causing some stress?
Yeah.
There's so much to it, and I feel that your explanation, it really does tell us how valuable yoga therapy is. It is different than a yoga certification. It is different than physical therapy.
Or talk therapy, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
or talk therapy even. Exactly. Exactly. And I would say that that's more in line of where we are. We really are looking at those mental issues that, but the answers are coming from the body. It's not through the talk, it's through the answers of the body where we get to answer our own questions.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. To your point, like this question of why is my plate so full? Of course, there is, right? There's work and there are pieces that are absolutely necessary for our livelihood and connection and community. But then if we're taking a closer look, I think many of us notice we pack our plate even fuller. And how much of that is because we're avoiding something inside that is uncomfortable or painful or wounded, and we just don't know how to be with it. So we find these ways to keep our days so tightly packed, we just don't feel ourselves anymore, right? If I'm constantly cleaning my house, even though it's already clean, like, what is that, right? Like, there's something happening there underneath. And yoga therapy is a way of bringing more attention and awareness into what's happening in the body there. Yeah.
Yeah. It really is a very beautiful process. So what got you started? I don't know if I've ever asked you this. Like what got you started into the exploration of yoga therapy and into the field and continuing through with it?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking for a second. The shifting into yoga therapy, I feel like a part of me, even pre-yoga therapy training, had always had this curiosity about what's happening inside. So these more subtle practices, a lot of restorative and yin yoga. Like I was so curious and intrigued about um, being with stillness and being with what's arising out of stillness. So that's always been a big curiosity and interest, which I feel like through the yoga therapy training, there was just a lot more learning around that. On a personal level, I navigated a number of chronic health conditions at the time too. So I feel, even though I could say, yeah, I was interested in, more learning and a new certification, but on a personal level too, I was struggling with a lot of chronic fatigue and pain conditions and migraines, and there was a lot happening on that end that made me turn towards my practice and wanting to learn other tools to understand and support and turn inward. So I think that's a big piece. And the continuing to share it with the world. I would say there's this saying, I think it's Ram Dass, if I remember correctly, that goes, we're all walking each other home.
Yeah.
So I have a really strong sense for this. This isn't just about my personal um, progress or just me wanting to feel better. There's also a really strong sense if we're all kind of walking hand in hand towards more of a sense of wholeness, right? And ease. And so just a natural desire to share and support others along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. And that leads me really into asking you, I've always seen a deep, genuine care that you have for others.
Mm.
Um, and what core values guide your actions and decisions as a yoga therapist?
Mm. I feel like it's a two-part question, maybe. Um, I will say that the impulse to care is really, really deep in me. It shows up not just in my work, but in cat rescue, as you know. And it's so strong that I really have to check in with myself. It's like, oh, like I gotta reorient back to me because that impulse to support and care and help is really strong. And I wish it just comes from, the goodness of my heart. But I also think growing up, seeing suffering in people in my family, and the response was a really deep sense of I feel really helpless. Like I see people I care about in enormous pain and suffering, and there's nothing that I can really do about this. And it's an interesting one, and I've recently had a number of conversations with clients about this because we look out into the world right now, just opening the papers, and it's incredible. The amount of suffering and pain that's happening right now is really enormous. It's so big, and it often comes with a sense of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel helpless. It's so beyond me. It's so big. And that's where I come back to reorienting towards, my community and people that I am in touch with, and where I do have a sense of, oh, I can support. Like, I got you. Like, for this moment, for this hour right now, I can give you a little support. I don't think I can lift all the pain and suffering off you, but for right now, there is something that I can do. And so that's a deep impulse to, in some small way, just reduce a little bit of suffering and pain in the world. Yeah. And so the core values was the second part that you've asked about, right, Janine?
Yeah.
I don't think it works for me to, go through this list of core values and be like, oh yeah, those sound good, and then start aligning my work or my life accordingly. I think it's rather the other way around. I show up the way that it feels natural to me. And then maybe in retrospect, I can reflect and see like what are the core values that are really evident here. I would say unconditional positive regard is a really big one. So whoever you are, whatever you are navigating and struggling with is welcome here. Your emotions can be too small or too big. You can't talk too much or too little. Whatever it is that you're coming in with gets to be here, is welcome, and gets to be held in this space. And I feel like welcoming the differences in all of us at the same time, also, it feels like it allows me to also honor that shared humanity. Where right deep down, like we all just want to feel safe and secure. Right deep down, we all just want to feel connected and seen. Right? We all want to have a sense of purpose and meaning. We all want to feel a little better and more comfortable in our bodies. So recognizing that kind of sameness in all of us, I feel, is a big part there too. I don't know if those are core values. Hopefully that answers your
I
question.
think so. I would think so. I really feel that you really hit that beautifully. Yeah, I really do. So thank you for that. Um, I wanted to just shift gears a little bit. So you had talked about your husband
Mhm.
and how he does the filming of your yoga therapy videos. So I kind of wanted to know, what is a day like when the two of you get together to
Uh-huh.
create videos?
Uh-huh.
Do you have a studio? Do you do this at home? What can you,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
can you tell us?
it's a little chaotic, to be honest. I mean, you see the final product, it's like, oh, nice audio, nice lighting, nice the whole thing. But behind the scenes, it's a little bit wilder than that. We shoot our videos at home because it's quieter. We don't have any traffic noises in the background. We can control the lighting a little bit better. But we don't have a huge house, so it actually requires us to move our entire living room. So we start out just kind of huffing and puffing a little bit, right? Like literally like schlepping couches out of the space and tables and shelves and artwork and clearing out the entire living room. It all gets squished over to the other side of the house, which is a complete disaster at that time. There's a lot of cleaning involved, setting up the lighting. So it takes a while for us to even just get ready to start shooting some material. And we found our rhythm, so we both know who's got which task and what to focus on and what to pay attention to. So once we roll usually. There are some cat disruptions, like a crying cat that's coming around, and we might have to pause and reset and edit some of that out. So they tend to be long days because once we go through this whole spiel of moving our whole house, we tend to stay focused for several hours. So we produce quite a bit of material that day. And then at the end, we are both, you know, we've learned about each other to really give each other some space at the end of it because he's extremely focused on the technology, right? And I'm doing yoga poses for hours. So we're both kind of exhausted and wiped out in a different way, which means we need some space to kind of reset. So that's yeah, it's a big day. We are currently working on a house extension. So we are going to have a space dedicated for shooting videos, which will hopefully make that process a little easier and more enjoyable for us.
That sounds great. I think that will be wonderful. Yeah, that will be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your projects are getting bigger in our conversation. So what can you tell us about your current projects? Is there anything that you can share with us so we know?
Yeah. We just pretty recently agreed to work with a local medical clinic. So that's a recent project that we've been both working on, and it's still in that just getting it off the ground phase. We have a couple of classes set up here at the studio for patients of this clinic, as well as creating a curated video library. So depending on the organizations who are the people that will have access to these videos, we choose specific selections. We might say, let's take out anything that's a little more intermediate or a little bit stronger. Let's focus on more beginner-friendly practices, mindfulness, relaxation. So folks will have access to this video library as well. And working with organizations is, I get really excited about it because I feel like there is an opportunity to give access to yoga therapy practices to people that otherwise may not be able to have the resources for this, right? Whether it's private sessions or even just weekly classes or courses, there are a lot of folks in the community that just don't have the means. And being able to provide that is that's pretty meaningful to me. Yeah, yeah,
So too, and I feel that since 2020 happened, so many of us are at home.
yeah.
We it's been 5 years, but we're still kind of at home, and we had all of this access at that time. So this video library can be just accessed through their computer, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is great. And I love seeing how yoga therapy is permeating through these different fields and
Yeah.
to these different areas. It's getting to be a little bit more of a well-known, term. And to me, it is very exciting because it really does help us to get through difficulties. And that's where most of us struggle is when we're frustrated, when we're upset, when we're angry. We don't really know what to do all the time or why what these feelings even are, or we shut them down and we just stonewall or swallow it down. And so when we get to know ourselves, it helps us at work too, not, throughout our whole life,
That's
not
right.
just on the mat or in the practice or with the practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like the just kind of looking at the people I work with and what comes up, especially in private sessions, like the anxiety level and stress level is really up for so many people right now. And my sense is that, pre-COVID, we struggled with personal challenges and ups and downs in life, and were able to navigate to some extent. But I do think that these very unprecedented times that we're in, and changes in the world and changes in the country, there is this additional like huge backdrop of uncertainty that's just being added to everyone's plate. We're starting to really struggle with feelings like overwhelm and frustration and anxiety. And so just like you're saying, like learning ways to respond to that, not just on the yoga mat, but learning little practices and little mini self-care tools that we can do while we're at work, right? While we're out and about, when we notice getting triggered, seems really important. Yeah, we're working on a little video series that's called Self-Care Tips and Tools. And they're like
Love that.
5-minute little blurbs, and they're exactly this. They're just introducing little practices that you can do anytime, anywhere, wherever you are, just as a way to regulate your nervous system or find a little support, take a little break from what's happening. And I think there is, there's a lot of value in taking yoga off the mat and supporting people in everyday life situations as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much, does it, to get regulated, to become aware of a breath?
Yeah.
It's amazing what state that you can shift into so quickly. So I can't wait to see those. Are those just in January, or are they gonna be
We have them on the website in our video
okay,
library.
good.
Yeah, so they'll be out. They'll be accessible in one way or another. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But let's see, we just recorded videos a couple of days ago, and there was one practice around support. And so, like even right now, where you are in your space, like take a moment and notice what feels supportive to you, right? So it could be beautiful piece of art on the wall, or oh, there's my cat that's curled up on the chair, and even just taking that in for a moment can feel supportive, right? Or the surface that I'm sitting on or leaning back into, there's a sense of support there, right? Or the air that I breathe, the oxygen that my body receives. So it's a really simple practice, but just dropping in and noticing what's happening right now that's actually supportive to my body.
Oh, yeah. Even just the protection from the elements outside, right? If it's a nice day here, but someone might be in their home and it's raining or it's windy. And so having that refuge of a roof, something that simple, or the floor.
Right? Or the temperature in your space, right? Whether it keeps you comfortably cool or comfortably warm, or even the clothes on your skin protecting you, right? There's a sense of, there's a little support that I'm getting. And I feel like, I mean, speaking from myself personally, there is so much support in my life that I don't always pause to acknowledge, right? And if I'm unaware of it, then I also don't actually get to receive the support, right? So just taking a moment to draw attention to what it is that supports me in that moment is also a way to receive that a little more fully and take it in, and then notice, oh, maybe there's a deeper breath, right? Maybe my shoulders just settled a little bit more. And that's, right, this tiny moment of a little bit of nervous system regulation right there.
Yeah, I do feel like we are really good in America to do fast. We like amped up 24-hour society. Everything needs to be done yesterday. So to find those moments is definitely beneficial. And I wanted to lead into the next question. You're from Germany, you have traveled to different places. And based off of your travels, what do you think would benefit the mental health of the American culture? Like, are there things that maybe you do in Germany that you don't see here, or that you've come across in other places that you just don't see here?
Yeah.
Or are we all in the same boat?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So take it all with a little grain of salt, because I have not actually spent much time in Europe in the last 20 years. So now it's just short family visits for the most part. But I think to your point, yes, there's something in the American culture that just tends to be busier, right? And we see this even with companies that have less vacation days available for their employees than a lot of European countries. There is a strong entrepreneurship here in America, maybe stronger than in Germany, or at least 20 years ago, from what I remember. That might have changed. Like you and I, like we create our own opportunity, right? We're self-employed. We are creating our own work, and it's hard to find those boundaries between what's work life and what's play and what's rest, right? It's so easy and especially when you're passionate about your work, right? It's so easy to suddenly work through the weekend and not take enough time away from it. And I think that's what a lot of people experience. And especially because those professional paths are often financially less secure, right? We don't get benefits. So there's always a sense of like, I just got to keep working on it, right, to create more security and safety. And that often takes away some of the free time and space. So I think being overworked and not taking enough time to rest or be on vacation has a huge impact on our health and on our well-being. I would say the insurance system and the differences there, I would bring that in for sure. And just speaking to my own experience, we know there's something like medical bankruptcy in America. Like that doesn't exist in many other countries, right? And so just knowing about that possibility is huge. If we have this kind of dark cloud hanging over us, like what if there is a scenario where my husband or I are in an accident and our insurance does not cover all the costs that are required? So there is a feeling of I got to have a little cushion in my bank account to feel a little bit safer, right? But then how do you put a number on that? Is 10,000 enough, right? 20, 50, 100,000? Like you just don't know. So that part is so uncertain. And I think it's very easy to be in this dynamic of constantly working to add a little more to that cushion, to add a little bit more safety, and still not actually feeling fully safe, right? Because you don't have a guarantee. And I think that lack of safety is what can cause like a deep, just underlying anxiety and sense of fear, you know? And that's where, what are some of those foundational pieces to feel secure? It's having a roof over your head, being able to buy some reasonably healthy food, right? Knowing there's medical care available when and if. And so anytime any of those real foundational pieces are um, threatened, right? Or there's some uncertainty, I think it causes a lot of stress. Right. And so you and I know when we are in this kind of ongoing like sense of insecurity and uncertainty, like that actually in and of itself has a huge impact on our health right there. So yeah, big questions. Big questions for sure.
I think so too. I think that there are many things in our culture that um, have just become a status quo and not really looked at.
Yeah.
And what I'm super grateful for really is that science is starting to be able to measure the benefits from yoga therapy, from body work, the embodiment of feelings and images and sensations. And and I remember when I was in Essentials, which is the very first introductory program to yoga therapy, the Phoenix Rising method. I did not even know I wanted to be a yoga therapist at that time, and um, our teacher, our mentor, Michael Lee, was telling us the different psychologies and the different things that led him to create that are built into this practice that he has. And one of the questions was, oh, did you study all of that work and then create your program? And he said, no, the program was created first, but now science can actually prove it that it works. And I was blown away by that.
Yeah.
And so I just think, wow, just incredible.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's like the just the validity of all these practices, right? And having the scientific backup, so to speak, is perhaps part of what expands it more, do you know? and becomes a more respected, more valued modality. Yeah, that's right.
So too. So speaking of mentors, who are some of your mentors and how have they influenced your life?
Well, curiously, I feel like I never connected with like one lineage, right? Or one particular mentor that was sort of my guide throughout my whole journey of the last 20 years around this. I would say there were a lot of different phases and interests and influences along the way. Michael Lee, speaking of which, and really the entire Phoenix Rising yoga therapy faculty had definitely a big influence on my work as it shows up today. Um, let's see, some other names that come to mind. Gabo Mate and some of my learning, especially around trauma. I have a lot of respect for what he brings to the community around this. Peter Levine, the whole somatic experiencing direction. Tara Brock. So those were perhaps people that I've, yeah, just leaned into a little more in the last few years. I spent a lot of time following a teacher by the name of Adyashanti, and he's a meditation teacher. I sat several silent retreats with him, which is where I met my husband, by the way.
Oh, really?
At a silent retreat.
Oh, maybe that's the key to marriage, right?
Right. So that was awesome. Different yoga teachers. I'm thinking Paul Grilly and what he brought to the community through Yin Yoga. Um, so there's that. I feel like honestly, the biggest learning that I continue to receive is from my students and clients. Yeah. I feel like just being in the work, being open to also responding very spontaneously and intuitively to what's happening in front of me instead of relying on something that I studied or learned.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that is perhaps and always has been my richest learning is to be really present with what's happening in front of me and to see um, what is most supportive to this person right now, right?
Yeah.
And what are the ideas and inspirations that come through me and what I might decide or offer or suggest or nudge someone into, it's essentially informed by the person that's right in front of me. Yeah.
Right. It really is like a dance because you are watching facial expressions, you're watching big sighs or yawns or shallow breathing or movement of the feet or the fingers, or even someone. I'm sure you've had this happen, but I have to ask, have you ever been holding somebody's leg and they just won't give it to you? They're holding it for you.
That's right.
They're helping. They're helping. And all of that is information that we take in to be able to lead into like what is happening here? What is going on? And bringing the presentness to the client to say, why do I do that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So,
And that's where it's kind of tossing the ball back to the client too, right? I'm not here to tell you what you need to know, but I trust that whatever it is that you need to know is right inside of you, right? I'm just here to hold that space and give you the support and nudge a little, but essentially the wisdom really arises from inside of you. Yeah, that's right.
I think so too. And when we don't get that, that is when we become outwardly focused, when
Mhm.
we are looking for validation or confirmation or kudos or whatever it is that we've been trained to look for in life, because our whole life is what led us to where we are today. Um, and some of it is not serving us. Some of it is creating that suffering that you talk about. Um, and when that comes to light, there is a freedom that I have seen as well, where maybe tears just start to stream down someone's face, or memories come in, these beautiful, sweet memories that come in of beautiful moments they had as children or adulthood. Um, and I feel that's why I really wanted to mention that genuine care that I see in you is there's this tenderness and this sweetness and this lovingness, that positive, what did you say? Um,
Unconditional
unconditional positive regard.
compassion.
Yes. Yeah. And we need that as human beings. We need to be able to go to a place where there isn't judgment, where
Yeah.
we're not telling you that you're doing it wrong, where we're not labeling you with a condition.
Right.
Um, it's really a place where you can just sort things out.
Yeah. And I think that's creating that kind of space. I'm just thinking about how many of us, and I'm including myself in that, have so much self-judgment and self-doubt, right? Or feel like there's something about who I am that's not enough, or that's wrong, or that should be different than it is, right? So being in a space where someone can hold you and say, hey, like, you're okay just the way you are. Like, whatever expression comes out, whatever you say or don't say, it all gets to be here. Um, that's right. It's already melting something inside that is so guarded around, like, how should I be? And maybe I should be different, or am I saying this wrong? This constant like self-censoring that we do, right? So something can already begin to soften a little bit on that level.
Yeah. And I'd love for you to repeat that. You're,
Yeah.
you're okay just the way you are.
You are okay.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we need that for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a few minutes left. I didn't know if there was anything that popped into your mind that you wanted us to know or talk about, or if you feel that everything is complete.
Hmm. I'll just pause with that question for a moment.
Yeah.
Anything else I want to share? Honestly, one big part that I um, continue to still kind of explore for myself is trust, right? And dancing those ups and downs in life and understanding that that is part of how life shows up, and we are as human beings these all-inclusive packages. There is the doubt, and there is the fear, and there is the anger, and there's also the comfort and the ease and the sense of connection. So being able to dance, the word that you brought in earlier, like to dance with those ups and downs, right? To dance with those fluctuations and being able to kind of trust that flow a little bit more is, I think, a big piece that I'm trying to embrace more fully, not always successfully so, but also hoping to communicate with my community more. Yeah.
And I'm actually so glad that you brought that up because when you do start to uncover just different things about yourself, it can lead to a suffering all within itself because you might feel like, wow, I do need to let something go. And you might feel that you're letting someone down,
Mhm.
or all of a sudden you're showing up with that pause. And people are looking around saying, who is this person? You're not the same. And it does work on our trust. And oftentimes it can, we could think that we had trust even in a relationship, but it really wasn't trust.
Mhm.
So how do you speak to that, like with long-term yoga therapy? There is this discovery and these changes that are happening. What type of support would someone need to walk through that without totally losing their mind?
Yeah.
And there, I feel like,
Yeah. It depends on, of course, the situation and the person and what's really happening in the space in that moment. But um, just hearing you talk regarding that trust and regarding the letting go too, like the first thing that I thought about in this moment was how we have to, or wow, there's a word salad happening here. But so much of there's such a deep focus on just getting more, right? Accumulating and adding things. And I think a lot of what we're working with in our process is also the capacity to let things go, right? To empty out and to become a little bit more still. And sometimes when we notice there are certain patterns or certain behaviors that start to unfurl, that start to become less relevant to us, then it's almost a bit of a shift in identity also. Like, oh, who am I without this anxious thing that has been such a deep part of my life for the last 3 decades, right? Like some of these patterns, they're so ingrained to a point where they become part of who we are, becomes what we define ourselves with. And when that starts to let go, it often follows a bit of a phase of confusion also, like, who am I without that? And then sometimes we want to just grab back onto what's familiar, not because it feels good or because it serves us, but because we know it and it's familiar, right? So a lot of this letting go is also a letting go into uncertainty. Like, oh, maybe I don't quite know who I am without those fear responses. And I think the part that I would want to encourage, to come back to your question, is a sense of curiosity. Like, oh, I wonder who
Yes.
I could be
Uh,
without.
yes, that the curiosity takes the fear away, right? Because I know for myself, I had suppressed so much emotion that I would feel this fluttering in my chest that I thought, what's wrong with my heart? But it was this really quick nervous system response of an emotion wanting to arise and me pushing it down and it wanting to arise and pushing down. And so when I could finally meet that with curiosity and say, oh, this is what it is, it lost its power over me. And I could choose to do something different. I could choose to write it out and say, oh, yeah, this is me right now. Just I'm feeling that. I know something's going on, and bring more of that curiosity in. And oh boy, I'm I love that word. I love that word.
It's a
That
good one.
it is, yes, because when we can meet ourselves with curiosity, then we know that we're okay. We know that we don't have to fit into, the square peg in the round hole, right? It's just like, no, this is discovery and the uniqueness of the human being that I am, who has had these different experiences than anyone else really in the history of time.
And you can feel how, curiosity, like even somatically, it brings like a sense of openness, right? Whereas if I am reacting by like being scared of something, that usually comes with constriction and tension and a sense of bracing, right? So here I am noticing that sadness arising, and I can either stuff it down, right, and respond with the bracing because I'm essentially afraid to experience and feel that sadness and let it rise, right? Whereas curiosity, it helps us in being more open, like giving it a little more space, right? So it can breathe and it can be and it can move. And it's just such a different relationship to, to bring into that. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I want to just take a deep breath together, if we could, which we've done many, many deep breaths together, many sacred pauses together.
And big
So,
sighs and big
yeah,
moments.
lots of tears, lots of emotion. And I just want to deeply, from the bottom of my heart, say thank you for your time today, for opening up the window to yoga therapy and opportunities to get curious in life. And I just wish you the best on your endeavors, and of course I know I will see you soon and we'll be chatting again in our pajamas with our cat.
Can't wait. I can't wait. Thank you so much, Janae, for inviting me to be a part of this. And as always, it's precious to be in a space with you.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm trying to sign off here, but there we go.
Oh, you should totally keep that in there.
I think I will.